Hello, Ramon. Can you hear me? Okay, so I welcome all participants to our webinar today. Should there be any technical difficulties, please indicate in the Q&A or in the chat. Our event today is about the political participation of disabled people in the European elections. I want to start by quoting Article 29 of the UNCRPD, which obliges state parties to guarantee persons with disabilities political rights on an equal basis with others. And it is as announced in the European Strategy on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The European Commission is providing advice to member states on how to involve disabled people in politics, among others by adopting a guide on good electoral practice. Nevertheless, disabled people still face many barriers preventing them from participating in politics. There are very few disabled MEPs. In our webinar, we want to learn more about the various barriers preventing disabled people from entering politics. And we have invited 3 disabled politicians to tell us about their experiences and how they overcame the barriers. Our first disabled speaker is Stelios Kimporopoulos. He is a member of the European Parliament from Greece, and he is with the European People's Party. Then we welcome Kristina Dardonit from Lithuania, who is active in local politics, and Richard Bahari from Czechia, who would like to run for office but is deprived of this right. Then we have from the Validity Foundation and the law firm Convington and Burling representatives who are going to talk to us about their plans to combat the legal barriers preventing disabled people from participating in politics. They are planning to find a disabled person who is prevented from participating in politics due to legal barriers. They will themselves tell you more about it. Due to a tight schedule, MEP Kimporopoulos has asked me that he can go first after my introduction, and after Stelios, after MEP Kimporopoulos, we will continue with the agenda as indicated. Okay, Stelios, I hand over the floor, the microphone to you. Please go ahead.
Dear Florian, thank you so much for this change on schedule. It really, I need to go back to plenary, and but on the other hand, I'm very happy that I'm here today with you. Maybe some of you, you know that I'm still recovering from a challenging surgery, which has kept me away from events and conferences. Therefore, my kickoff by participating to your webinar, excuse me, but I would prefer to say our webinar, seems like a good thing to me, since ANIL is one of my roots, especially when it comes to EU political participation. So being active in EU politics as a disabled person has many prerequisites that should not be ignored. The most fundamental of them is to have a legal capacity, which unfortunately is not ensured for many disabled persons. Another prerequisite is having the means to be active, independent, and emancipated in one's family and close environment as well within the society, which means that living institutions or even living in a non-inclusive society with no independent living schemes automatically excludes all these disabled persons from being politically active. The reason I'm referring to these obvious preconditions, on one hand, is to highlight the multiple barriers in many disabled persons' lives that eliminate the chances of any kind of political participation. On the other hand, the fact that I come from a member state with, until recently, no independent living scheme made my participation and especially the procedure to be elected 4 years ago way more complicated and costly than the average political candidate. I owe to a great extent the realization of such a goal of mine to the support of my family. I had to be active all over the country with no personal assistance financed by the state and no accessible public transportation. Not every disabled person is lucky enough to have that kind of support. Therefore, I feel an intense responsibility to represent their voices in the European Parliament. After my election, the situation became practically easier for me since I am granted with personal assistance by European Parliament, but I would say that it became also more complicated. During these 4 years, I have faced many times the same dilemma. While being invited as MEP in inaccessible places, I have to consider whether I should accept to get to that place with undignified ways, or to participate in a conversation without being able to reach the panel. Since the Greek people, disabled and not disabled, have given me the order to represent them in every situation with their voices, or whether to remain loyal and strict to my identity as a disabled person by refusing to participate under these conditions, by highlighting at the same time the importance of inclusivity and accessibility. There were not little times where I was invited to speak in an event only to find out upon my arrival that the entrance was not accessible. The elevator was not working, or I was even asked to speak remotely via camera in a different room because this specific room was not accessible. In every single case, I weighed the pros and cons of participating or leaving, and I really hope that I have chosen wisely all of the times and that the future generations of disabled politicians will not have to face such dilemmas. During the first 3 years of my political term, I was not able to reach the rostrum in the plenary hall of the European Parliament. Needless to say that I have not left the room, I have remained, I have spoken from a disadvantaged spot, I have faced the fact that my speech were considered to be less important since it was not delivered from the rostrum as everyone else's. All this time, I was pointing out the significance of the full accessibility in the EU buildings and procedures, and how symbolic it would be for the democracy to have an accessible rostrum until the rostrum actually became accessible. The same prejudices and stereotypes that exist in the Society for Disability are also represented in the political world, possibly to a higher degree, because of the competitiveness among the politicians. Although I received an all-time record amount of electoral votes in Greece, there were politicians claiming that the Greek people have voted me only because they felt sorry for my impairment. Some have even made public statements about it. Despite the fact that I was a disabled activist nationally and European-wide since a very young age, before getting involved in politics, with a well-known action, my political opponents had tried to convince people that I'm not interested in disabled people's rights, which has actually made me more popular since my interest has always been and remains well-known and well-proven. All this discriminatory behavior has actually encouraged me to be more and more active. Getting and remaining involved in politics as a disabled person is hard, complex, expensive, and sometimes even painful. But it is the only way for disabled persons to ensure our rights. It may sound like a luxury, since disabled persons all across the EU face survival risks or are institutionalized. But if we are not present and active on decision-making levels, nothing will improve. The EU seems to have realized that, therefore, it promotes the political participation of disabled persons through its strategies and policies. And in particular, the EU strategy for the rights of disabled persons for the years 2021 to 2030, the resolution including a proposal for a new EU electoral law guaranteeing the right to vote for all persons with disability, adopted by the European Parliament on May 2022. The directive on adequate minimum wages, which sets requirements to make accessible to disabled persons, adopted on October 2022. The Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, with disability-related provisions, adopted in November 2022. I hope that these policies will contribute to a higher percentage of disabled MEPs in the next elections. I also hope that the much anticipated EU disability card, which will become the tool for mutual recognition of disability status as an EU document, will also ensure active political participation of disabled persons and activists across the EU. I think that these words somehow support the idea that the only way to be elected is to still fight for our right to vote and to be active as much as possible. Florian and all of you, thank you again, and I will be very happy to receive all your questions, and I wish that I will see soon some of you in person in Brussels. Thank you again.
Stelios, thank you very much for sharing these experiences with us. I will straight away hand over to our next speaker, Stephen Allen, Director of the Validity Foundation. Stephen, as soon as I manage to turn the spotlight to you, you can go ahead.
Would you also be able to share the PowerPoint as well?
Yes.
Thank you, Florian, and hopefully you can hear me now. Firstly, what a privilege to follow on from those opening remarks there from Stelios. I think it gives us a good emphasis moving forward in this campaign. Indeed, on behalf of Validity, let me start by saying we are delighted to be working with you at ENIL on this important legal initiative to advance the rights to political participation of persons with disabilities in next year's European elections. Those elections will undoubtedly affect all of us who live across the European Union and will be important far beyond the borders of the EU itself. And we have an excellent panel of speakers joining today, so I'm going to try and keep these opening remarks relatively brief. First, I should explain that Validity is a specialized legal advocacy organization. So really our mission is to provide legal support to persons with disabilities and their representative organizations to promote full implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And today in particular, we're delighted to jointly launch this campaign alongside both you at the European Network on Independent Living, but also with some incredible lawyers who are working from one of the leading international law firms with us, Covington and Burling LLP. They, as experts in European law, will be helping us to take real cases on behalf of persons with disabilities who want to be involved in next year's elections, but who are experiencing all sorts of barriers that we're hearing about today. So before I move to the next slide, why are we doing this together? To start off, we are jointly committed to promoting the civil and political participation of persons with disabilities across the entire European Union. All too often, people with disabilities remain denied their right to participate in crucial matters that affect them. But this project isn't just about ensuring that people with disabilities can talk about issues affecting them. Instead, and using Article 29 of the CRPD as our guide, we believe that ensuring full and equal participation in all aspects of elections and public policy are essential if the EU itself is to fill its own democratic goal of being an inclusive and democratic union of the people of Europe. Let me ask a few questions. How can the EU achieve this goal without ensuring that all persons with disabilities can vote? And how can the EU make meaningful contributions in the world if people with disabilities themselves cannot become our public representatives? Because as the CRPD makes clear, This is about the right of all citizens to contribute to the democratic fabric of our societies, to be leaders, to be voters, to be activists, and ultimately to be equal and respected citizens. Next slide, please. So that is our goal. But we know that, and as you've heard from Stelios, in reality, millions of people with disabilities are systematically denied the equal right to take part in elections and public debate. Even though all EU member states and the EU itself have voluntarily signed up to the CRPD, it should shock us when we realise that millions of people with disabilities are actually excluded from European elections. According to research, 7 million people with intellectual disabilities will not be able to participate in European elections due to information and communication barriers. Hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities are legally prevented from voting or standing in elections due to abusive guardianship regimes. Indeed, guardianship orders themselves are so dangerous because they remove people's rights to take part in public and political discussion. And there are other legal barriers too, such as during registration procedures, when people are prevented from registering because they're viewed to lack sufficient political capacity to vote. And for people who are kept in institutions, the sad reality is that very few will be able to register to vote. And even when they can, we know that voting booths rarely appear inside institutions on election day. Over the coming months, we want to break down these barriers through taking a range of legal actions on behalf of European citizens with disabilities. Our message is clear here. European elections should not be regarded as free or fair unless the barriers facing persons with disabilities are decisively removed. And indeed, we believe that the European courts should be assisting with removing those barriers, ordering their removal. Next slide, please. European elections only take place once every 5 years, and each cycle represents one of the largest democratic events taking place in the world that year. Of course, with all the major problems facing the world, it can be easy to wonder whether there is any real point in taking part. Well, I would say the decision about whether or not to vote or to stand for elections is and must always be each individual's own choice. But here are a few things to consider. First, EU elections are a rare opportunity to make your voice heard, as Stelios said, about those big problems that affect us all. Whether you are concerned about the cost of living crisis or the war in Ukraine, it is important for all Europeans to know that the EU is generally involved in the big decisions that affect us all. The EU will make better decisions if our elections and public debates are truly inclusive and give everyone the equal right to participate. If you want to advocate for greater accessibility in your neighbourhood or community, it is perhaps useful for you to know that the EU has the money and the resources to help. But that money and those resources will only come when we advocate on these issues together, taking part in debates at the highest levels about what should be funded and what should be not. The EU is one of the most powerful political and economic groups of nations in the world. It has the means to make real change, both inside the EU and outside. And it has the ability to make real positive change in our world. So every single vote does count. And I hope that that will inspire you of the importance of taking part in the democratic process. But let's be clear, taking part is not a privilege, but a right for us all, and one that we want to enforce, including for persons with disabilities. Next slide, please. So As our contribution, we want to fight for your rights and the rights of all to inclusive elections for the European Parliament next year. We've put together an incredibly brilliant legal team, and we will be working with other organisations to advocate for real change. Concretely, this means we want to take real cases. So if you are a European citizen with a disability who is prevented from voting or standing in elections, please get in touch with us. If a guardianship order means you can't register for elections, we want to hear from you. If you are in an institution and have been told to forget about voting, please reach out to us. As with all of our legal work, we can't promise you what the final outcome will be. But what we can promise is that some of the best lawyers in Europe will be on your side. And through taking a stand, you will also be helping so many other people with disabilities so far who have been silenced. So to our final slide, if any of these issues affect you, and if you would like to be involved, please feel free to reach out. You can email us simply at vote@validity.ngo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. That was very interesting. No need to quickly copy the email address. These slides will be available later. And okay. The next speaker is Julia Gevrenova, representative of the law firm Covington and Burling. Julia, are you ready?
Yes, thank you so much, Florian. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to everyone, and I am very grateful for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. As both Florian and Stephen now mentioned on a few occasions, I am representing Covington Burling. We are a very big international law firm, and we have been working together both with Validity and INEO for many years. Our team is comprised of several lawyers, but on this slide you can see some of the key lawyers. So we have Bart, who is our partner. He has had the opportunity to bring cases before the European Court of Justice, and Rosa Oyarzabal, who has also defended the rights of also people with disabilities before national courts. My story with this topic began already in 2015, when at the time I was working still at the Ministry of Justice in my country, Bulgaria. And at the time I was working on a law which was trying to improve the situation of legal capacity for people with mental disabilities in my country. Unfortunately, that law never became reality. So since then, I've been active in this field and very much interested in helping people to defend their rights in the European Union, which is also what I will be speaking about briefly today. I wanted to start off explaining to you all a little bit more about the European Union. Stephen mentioned on several occasions that the European Union is a very powerful organization. And in fact, I imagine that everyone on this call is living in a country which is part of the European Union. The European Union, simply put, is a group of countries that at some point in time agreed to work together so that their citizens can have a better future and a better life. There are currently 27 countries that participate in the European Union. Such countries are Hungary, Czechia, Belgium, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Germany, and many, many others. The countries within the European Union take decisions together about how me and you, we all live together. And those decisions can be very broad. They can affect, let's say, what we consider good food, what we consider safe food, or maybe how we want to spend the money that we gather through taxes, what activities we want to support. But that also includes the rights of us as citizens, including for people with mental disabilities. So when you go on about your day-to-day life, you can be assured that the European Union has at some point made a decision to improve it or to make it worse, which we don't support, but it can happen. So if you're born in any of these 27 countries, you would automatically be considered a European citizen. And that is very important because as European citizens, we all have equal rights. And that applies also to our voting rights or rights to stand in European elections. We mentioned now on a few occasions the European Parliament. What you should know is that the European Parliament is one of the key organizations or institutions within the European Union. The European Parliament is one of the institutions that makes decisions about our future. They usually pass laws, which then apply to all of us as European citizens. But what is important to understand is that the European Parliament is comprised of citizens like you and me, who we elect during the European elections. So when, as Stephen said, we have elections every 5 years. So when we have elections, we all throughout the European member states go to dedicated locations, and then we give our votes to who we think should join the European Parliament and make decisions for us moving forward. Our votes are then counted, and whoever gets the most votes gets to join the Parliament. But this is not just a mechanical exercise. It is one of those occasions where we can exercise our democratic rights and we have a say in the future of the Union. And I keep repeating the future and not just the present, because we need to fight for changes now in order for them to take place during our lifetime. So when we elect who gets to join the Parliament, we also say what changes in the rules we would like to see. And that would also apply to rules applicable to you as citizens of the Union, whether you would like to receive more support in your day-to-day life. Maybe you think there should be more money spent to make certain areas more accessible or to get more support. The European Parliament has the power to help in those areas, which is also why it's so important, in my opinion, to participate in the elections. And speaking of the elections, as I said, we as European citizens all have the right to participate, and we can participate in two big ways in the elections. First, we can vote and decide who gets to join the European Parliament. And the second is we can stand and join the European Parliament. This means we get to put ourselves forward as candidates and be elected to be part of the European Parliament. And our first speaker is indeed such a representative who was dignified, and he decided to stand, and the people of Greece voted for him so he can join and be part of the European Parliament. As Stephen mentioned, the elections happen only once every 5 years. And we have the next elections in 2024, between June the 6th and June the 9th. And this is why we in Validity and ANEW are starting this campaign, because after these elections in 2024, it will take 5 more years before we can take any legal action in the way we would like, which is why we wanted to talk today to you about your right to vote and your right to stand. So maybe you're asking yourself, now that we've spoken so many times, do I have the right to vote? And yes, the answer is yes. From a legal point of view, your right as European citizens to vote in the European elections has been protected both at international and European level. This means that there are explicit laws, and I will not go into the details, but there are explicit laws where your right to vote have been explicitly recognized. But why do you then encounter what Stephen referred to as barriers? The way the law works is you have the recognition of the right on European level, but it is up to member states then to implement those rules, which means to help you then exercise your right on, when there is an election on national level. And what happens quite in some countries is that your right to vote, even though it's recognized by the European rules, is not properly implemented on national level. So some countries, and I'll give an example with my country, Bulgaria, may put obstacles for you to exercise your right. For instance, in Bulgaria, in the national laws, it is stated that you cannot be included in the lists which will allow you to vote if you have been put, for instance, under guardianship. It is our opinion that this infringes on your right to vote, and this is exactly what we would like to fight for you, to remove these barriers. And we'll get to that point a little bit later during today's presentation. My last point for now is also to cover with you the right to stand. And as I said already, the right to stand is when you choose to put yourself forward as a candidate for the European Parliament. And I think our first speaker gave very good idea of what that looks like when you see and then want and succeed to join the European Parliament. Similarly to the right to vote, you have the right to stand in the European elections. Again, it is protected under European rules, but it's a little bit more difficult to exercise it for various reasons. And some of the barriers are also, again, found on national level, making the participation easier is what we would like to fight for you. And for now, I think this is all I have for you, Florian. I think I can return this back to you.
Yes, thank you, Julia. Thank you, Julia. Yeah, we have heard now, I think, very helpful information on what the Validity Foundation and Community in Berlin are planning. Yeah, our next speaker, Christina from Lithuania, due to shaky internet connection, will join us first via video, and then hold on while I select the video. First via video, and then I think she will be available for questions.
Hello, it's nice to see everyone. I am Kristina Dudonytė, an independent living activist from Lithuania, and I have a movement disability. I was invited here to talk about how to stand for elections in municipal politics. So first, we should understand that political participation is also our right, and it should be ensured. Of course, it's important a right to vote and accessibility for voting. Many organizations work for it here in Lithuania, but I will talk just about political participation and what is important here. So I have participated in municipal elections 3 times, but I haven't ever won. I think you want to guess why. So I will try to tell you. Firstly, you need to choose a political party. Of course, it can be good for you and bad for others, but it should be just your choice, not other choices. Many parties can invite you to become the members before the election because they see that you are active. I also get many invitations. Why? It can be 2 things. One is that if a political party involves disabled people, other people or voters can think that this party is much better than other parties because it involves various people. It is good thinking, but the most important thing is not allowed to use the situation. If someone invites you to join the party, you can see that you are an active human. You should be required to add more things to the program for election. For example, what is necessary for disabled people or other questions where you are active. Of course, things for disabled people can also be good for all, like universal design. So when you offer your ideas, you should prove that it will be good for all people. So the most important thing is that the political party matches your values. At first, I was at one party. It is called Social Democrats. But I joined another political committee later because that committee was more aligned with my values. Maybe it was a bad step because I think I would have been elected this year if I had not made that change. Because Social Democrats won the most mandates in this year's election. It was about 20 mandates. So elections are like the lottery. You will win or not, but you should try to do it if you want changes faster in the topics where you are active. Secondly, of course, you need to be known, meet people, talk about the problems and how you solve them, how you will solve them, or how have you already solved them. You should make an advertisement of yourself on paper, on the radio, on television, on social media, everywhere. So you should really work before elections, but do not just show your beautiful face. Thirdly, you should have a good number, but it's not the most important thing. I had the number 24th in the first election, the ninth number in the second election, and the third number in the last elections, but it didn't help very much. Because, as I said, the Social Democrats won the most mandates in my municipality this year. If talking about struggles, so I didn't feel it because I was involved everywhere. But I can say one thing that it is not so easy to involve the problems of disabled people in decision-making processes. For this reason, you should go to politics. You should talk about it very widely and usually need to show that it will be good for all, not just for disabled people. For example, if you talk and want to make changes in an accessible environment, you should see that it will be good for disabled people, for senior people, for children, for tourists, and so on. Then voters will think that it would be good to vote for you because you will try to make life better for all people. And finally, it is good to get involved in parties and to change attitudes politically. So I think that I will participate in the elections for the fourth time. So thank you for attention and goodbye.
So I think this was a really interesting, moving video message. I hope Christina stays active. We now proceed to the next speaker, Richard from Czechia, who is likewise joining via video message.
Ahoj Richarde, mohl by ses nám trošku představit?
Ahoj Terko, jo. Tak spolupracuju Rytmusem a na Rytmus mi našel práci i bydlení. Mi našel taky. Jsme spokojený Rytmusem.
Tak to je skvělý. A Richarde, zajímáš se třeba i o nějaký politický témata?
No, zajímá, zajímá.
A o jaký třeba?
Oni řeší hodně věcí, ale to je na dlouhý debatu. Ale tak nějaký, jako kde bydlet, jako kde má jako dobře bydlet, pak jsou seniori, kde mají bydlet, péči, aby měli.
To je skvělý.
Postižení, aby byli, jako, kde měli bydlet taky.
A Richarde, a ty jsi třeba byl sám volit?
Byl jsem volit, no. Dvakrát byl jsem volit.
A můžeš i ty sám být zvolený, když by si chtěl kandidovat?
Nemůžu, protože jsem omezený. Omezená technika.
Máš omezenou svéprávnost. A snažíš se s tím třeba něco dělat, s tou omezenou svéprávností, aby se to změnilo?
Snažím, no.
A co?
Mám právničku po ruce, který mi pomáhá s tím, aby nemohl být omezený, aby to
Takže se vlastně snažíš i u soudu, aby se to změnilo, aby ti tu své právnost vrátilo.
Ano.
Tak to je skvělý, tak to ti držím moc pěsti, aby se ti to podařilo. A Richarde, máš nějaký vzkaz pro lidi, kteří jsou na tom stejně jako ty a taky třeba nemůžou být volený?
Takže nezdávejte to.
All right, thanks to Richard. I have to say the video was a bit shorter than I expected, but I can't hand over straight away to Julia again. Julia, please go ahead with the second part.
Yes, of course. I hope you can all see again my screen. So I want to continue with telling you a little bit more about our plan and what we are hoping to achieve both with validity and annual. So as now has been said on a few occasions, we want to fight for your rights to vote and stand. And the way we plan to do this is for the new elections that will come up now in 2024. If you choose to join our project, we would like to represent you before a court and defend your rights. This means if you choose to vote but are denied or are not allowed to attend or cannot attend because the government did not provide you with enough support, we can represent you and bring a case before the national court of your country. We will do all of this free of charge. You don't have to pay anything. And what we hope to achieve ultimately is to bring these cases for anyone who wants to join the program before the national courts. And we hope that the national courts will then refer the cases to the European Court of Justice. And then we'll have an opportunity for the European Court of Justice, which is, by the way, the court which makes decisions for the whole of the European Union. We hope that the European Court of Justice will have the opportunity to declare yet again your right to vote and your right to stand in a much stronger way. And our desire is that this will allow then for both the Parliament and maybe the European Commission and other institutions to make change. So if, again, I'll use the example of Bulgaria. If we can have a Bulgarian volunteer who is not allowed to vote in the elections, we will bring a case before the Bulgarian courts, arguing that the laws in Bulgaria are a barrier for this candidate to exercise his rights to vote in the European elections. And then once the European Court of Justice reviews this case, we hope that this will be a push for Bulgaria to change their laws, thus making this much better for everyone else involved. So this will help not only you as a European citizens to exercise your rights to vote or stand, but it will help then any other European citizens, in this case, every other Bulgarian, to exercise their rights more equally. And this brings me to my final, my final slide is, why are we doing this? I think it's very important to understand that this is indeed an opportunity for us to help you individually or to anyone else who wants to sign up to this program, but also it will have a much bigger effect, an opportunity for us to find discrimination so that you all get treated equally to anyone else who doesn't have any disabilities. We also want people to know more about this problem. We want them to be aware that even if they don't see the issue, it doesn't mean that there is not a problem. We want more people to be aware that you want to exercise your right, that you want to be active and present in our everyday life and exercise and make your own opinions heard, but you are not able to do this because there are many obstacles placed before you. We hope that this will also be an opportunity to help you integrate into society better, because once we remove certain barriers, it should be also easier. And one big point is that we want to change the system. And to be more specific, we hope that this discussion surrounding your right to vote and your right to stand will start a discussion which is a little bit bigger and has to do with the problem of legal capacity. So we would like this maybe to this program or this initiative that we have to be an opening for a bigger conversation that concerns the fact that there are still member states, where, including Bulgaria, where people with mental disabilities face the challenges that they may be deprived of their legal capacity, and we want to fight against that. And so if you want to receive any more information about this project, or if you want to sign up, or if you want some of your friends or family to know more about this, you can send us any type of message at vote@validity.ngo. We will be more than happy to learn more about your story, to see if we can help you. And again, this will be all free of charge, so you don't have to worry about money or any other resources. And I am happy then to answer any further questions anyone else may have.
Thank you, Julia. I have to say, dragging a country to court for violating rights, it also sounds like fun, actually. I would do it straight away. Now we have quite a lot of time for question Q&A and discussion. The assistant of MEP Komporopoulos, Danai, will answer a question on behalf of the MEP. And so far we have our legal experts there to answer questions. I think Christina might be having connection problems. I'm trying to reach her. Yeah, Richard is not there, I guess. Please go ahead with questions.
So, Florian, I'm here. The best retains, so I'm here to answer any question.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can ask questions. You should be able to raise your hand, I guess, and I will enable your microphone, or you can post questions in the Q&A.
Florian, I see a question in the chat box.
Okay. In the question in the chat box, not in the queue. Okay. Luisa Corsiglieri is asking, I do not understand. Why are you not a European citizen? In Bulgaria, how is disability defined? Was this the question you were referring to, Stephen?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not quite sure to whom this question is directed to.
I guess I can pick this one up. I just wanted to clarify, maybe it wasn't very understandable, that as long as you are born in one of the European member states, you would be considered a European citizen. So this also includes if you're born in Bulgaria, you would be considered a European citizen. With respect to the definition of disability, unfortunately, I don't have the definition right in front of me, but I am aware that the Bulgarian law does distinguish between physical and mental disabilities. But what I am referring more as a barrier is the situation in which Hi, yes, thank you, Louisa. I'm happy to answer. So what I'm referring more to right now is a barrier. And this example was that in the case in which in Bulgaria specifically, someone is placed under guardianship or is decided by a decision of a court that he has a diminished legal capacity, that has the effect that you can no longer participate in elections, neither to vote nor to stand. Yes, the state recognizes in those instances that you still have, of course, some sort of disabilities, be it physical or mental, and of course, you would still be entitled to receive some type of assistance, be it monetary or any other form, depending, of course, on your disability. But the fact that you will be receiving support in some sort from the state does not change the fact that they have deprived you of your right to vote or the right to stand, which is what we are referring to as barriers, and which we consider to be illegal and contradicting the European rights that you have as European citizens. And it is exactly these barriers that we would like to challenge before the courts. I hope this is clearer, but of course, please do let me know in the chat if you have any further questions on this.
Okay. Yeah, we are waiting for more questions. Are there maybe? Okay, Stephen has a question. Great.
Well, a question, a bit of a reply as well, if I may. I think the question regarding people with disabilities in Bulgaria is a very important one, because the issues that Yulia has just described, where people can have their right to legal capacity removed, is a far, far bigger problem across the European Union. Article 12, as many of you know, of the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities says that everyone has the equal right to exercise their rights. What does that mean? Well, it means, for example, that when you sign a contract, the contract becomes legally valid. It means, for example, that when you decide that you want to marry someone, the country recognizes your desire and gives legal effect to that. It means that when you sign a document saying, I have created an organization of persons with disabilities, that organization is an official organization under the law. Guardianship is really about legal discrimination. It says that some people do not have the mental capacity to make decisions that count. But Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities says that that is the wrong approach. Actually, instead of removing people's rights, including their right to vote and their right to stand as politicians, what we need to be doing is providing the right support. Now, often in these debates, Florian, you will know that when OPDs and people with disabilities request support, it sounds like the old charity model, that people need a little bit more help. But this isn't a simple question of charity. This is a question of legal enforcement of rights. It is not simply a question for asking for help, but it is about demanding that states treat us all equally, that we all have the right to choose about our lives, to choose about who represents us, and ultimately to choose about those policies which have an impact on us all. I'm sure Stelios can say far more about what that final stage is around, but we for sure need more persons with disabilities, and particularly those who've experienced guardianship involved in this political debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Our participants are a bit shy with questions. Are there questions from the speakers to each other, maybe? Stephen.
Thank you. I suppose my question really is more for Stelios, because Stelios, you've said that originally when you stood for election, people said to you that they voted for you because they felt sorry in some sort of way. What's your answer to those critics?
You see me to laugh because the answer is quite easy. I'm here. I'm here. I'm in European Parliament. I contribute for good final results, not only what for the files that are focused on disability issues, but also for files which are for the whole society, for the economy, for the labor reality, for digital future and what is happening right now. But also, I think that I am one of the pioneers here in European Parliament that we try all together to build, because Ursula von der Leyen has started some years ago, to build the European Health Union. This is something very important to me. So I would like to excuse me for this word. I'm not monolithic person. I'm not focused only on us, because if we don't have a good social environment for all, it would not be even good for us when we are more active in society. So the key to take the other, to take from the point of society that we are serious, I think that we need to start talking more and more for other issues, not only for the excuse me for the word, the special issues which concern us. I think this is the key, and this is we need to fight for everybody who is quite extrovert to start to talk about, to open discussions for issues, except for our issues. I don't know if you understand my point, but what we need is to wear the shoes of others, and others to wear our shoes. This is the only way to understand each other's.
Would somebody like to comment on Stelios' remarks or questions? If not, there is one question in the chat. Is it just persons with disabilities prevented from voting? Or also other groups? Stephen.
In preparation for this project, we've been looking at the other groups who are denied the equal right to political participation. So more widely, women, and particularly women who experience multiple grounds of discrimination, so women with disabilities, women who come from minority ethnic communities, have experienced very, very high barriers also to their political participation. We also see that people who come from communities that have lower socioeconomic development, so essentially poorer communities, are less likely to be involved in the political process. Sometimes this is simply because of neglect of public authorities. They don't raise awareness of people's right to vote. They don't make it easy for people to be able to register to vote or to stand to vote. And indeed, many of those issues, those barriers, are also faced by persons with disabilities. So there are lots and lots of different populations who don't have an equal say in elections. And I think that this project, why I think it's really important, is that here we're saying that countries must do more. They can't just in the law say they respect the right to people's equality. What they need to do is make elections accessible, enable people to go to their local offices of local government to register, and remove barriers, whether they're physical, whether they're legal, from people's right to register. So by increasing the accessibility of the European Parliament elections in this project for persons with disabilities, I think we do actually, Florian, to your question, have the opportunity to make the political process more open. And as Stelios, I think, makes very clear there, we're not advocating for special votes for special people to talk about special issues affecting just narrow parts of the population. The people with disabilities that we work with and that we know are keen and passionate to advocate on many, many topics that are not purely about disability rights. And it is all of our right to be involved in those discussions. And so I hope that this project will contribute to that wider political and democratic inclusion that we seek. Thanks.
Stelios, you need to unmute yourself. Oh wait, I can unmute you too, I think.
Sorry for that. If it's possible to add up one more short comment on the intervention of Stephen, I think that the best way to deliver our difficulties needs is to convince other social excluded vulnerable groups to start an open discussion in order to discuss our issues, the difficulties that disabled persons face. On the other hand, we can do it as a group. We can follow the same procedure for another vulnerable group, start saying their problems and what they're facing in order to make more complex and to show that we are not alone, that we have allies, and we can and we share the same ideas and the same fears and the same problematic issues within society. So from my perspective, maybe this is a solution to create complexities between who says what for whom. It's a game, but if we follow this procedure, I'm sure that our voice will get stronger and stronger.
I hope to see the day that various disadvantaged groups work together more. Okay, there was one question at the chat, but I think it's more related to if the information will be provided. I have a question. Oh wait, Julia wanted to say something. Sorry, Julia, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
No problem. I'm sorry, I just see a question by Antonia in the chat. Is that what you were referring to?
No, I didn't see the question yet. It's visible now. Yeah, please respond to it.
Yeah, so it's a question from Antonia, and she's asking whether the existence of the deprivation of legal capacity and the actual deprivation of the right to vote in so many members of the EU is enough for the courts. Should an individual contact you for such a reason? And so the question is addressed to both me and Stephen. Well, thank you, Antonia, for the question. I think this is exactly the key problem that we're going on about, and of course, Stephen, feel free to jump in, but yes, we consider that these are the issues we want to bring before the court, and so if you you know, have a problem with that, absolutely please get in touch with us, because it is exactly you know, there is of course a link between the deprivation of legal capacity as a barrier for you to exercise your right to vote. Stephen, I see you raised your hand. No.
Well, I agree with you fully, Julia. We do want to hear from people, but I also wanted to maybe reflect back to a point that Christina made. She spoke about taking a bit of a risk, standing as a candidate. Stelios, you've spoken about this as well. You have to stand up and stand for something, and in an election, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I'd like to say that that's also similar with taking cases that we are talking about now. So we are looking for those of you who are willing to stand up and make a stand. I can promise you that Julia, her team, Validity, our team, the whole team at the European Network on Independent Living will be with you if you want to take that stand. This litigation is always risky, but courts won't make decisions unless someone brings a case. That's the purpose of us holding this webinar today. So yes, do get in touch with us. Courts won't make decisions unless we take cases to them. And this is our call to you for some of those cases. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for that. Okay, and Antonia has a follow-up question. So no one ever brought such a case within the EU?
I'll be guided by our team at Covington on this, but to our knowledge, there are very few people who have taken the type of case that we are talking about here. What this type of case is, as Julia mentioned, it's a little bit like taking a case against your own country before a European court. It's a really complicated legal procedure. It means you have to start in the courts in your own country first, and it takes a little bit of time before the case gets to Luxembourg, where the Court of Justice of the EU is. So I think the simple answer to your question, Antonia, is no one has taken these types of cases yet. And we want to test this way of taking cases because it may have great impact for many, many people. Thanks. Please correct if I'm wrong, Julia.
No, Stephen, I mean, I agree with what you just said. And it is precisely because we are not aware about such cases that we want to be the ones who bring them before the courts, and to help, as I said already, raise awareness and make a change in the way the law works. So Yeah, I also see a question in the chat about Hungary and their response about returning the right to vote. And I'm going to use that also as a great example of why we should be active, stand up and bring the cases, because there is a clear resistance on behalf of certain countries to fulfill their international and European obligations towards their own citizens, because this is exactly the type of behavior which we consider illegal, and we would like to challenge.
Well, I jump in and just say that I think we often are used to hearing that Hungary and other countries defend the indefensible at points. I think I'm British, by the way. Our country voted to leave the European Union, even though many of us wanted to stay in it. But I think when there is a question about a country's tradition and legal values, then that should be a public debate of all people in that country. When Hungary says it's not in line with our tradition and values to give people with disabilities the right to vote, it's kind of not a fair debate when you stop those people from speaking. It is not a fair debate when you lock institutions on election day and stop people from voting. And I think, and maybe Stelios, you'd have an opinion on this, I would hope that our political representatives understand that a significant number of the people that vote for them are actually people with disabilities. The people with disabilities can actually be important electoral portions. And so it's crucial that all representatives do take seriously the views of persons with disabilities and don't try to speak purely on their behalf.
Yes, Stephen, I totally agree with you, because I believe with all the people, without thinking of their impairment, all the people have some fears and they face some social obstacles. So I think that we are in the same point. We are on the same side of history. So I cannot believe that if some of us take a seat in the parliament, not only in the European Parliament, but also in the national parliament, one of his or her main aims will be to start creating a better environment for them. Otherwise, excuse me for saying that, she's not a human being. It's so simple, because he or she has forgotten the point that she or he has started, and to forgetting your background, your history, it doesn't. I think that it does lead anywhere, nowhere. It is going directly to kill yourself. So yes, we have the support from disabled persons, but this happening because they are waiting to make better their lives.
Our webinar the time for our webinar is almost up. So I think at this point it doesn't make sense anymore to ask new questions, go into further debates. I will use the opportunity to wrap up a little bit. We had some very interesting testimonies from 3 disabled politicians. We will make the recording available on YouTube, I think, so that you will be able to watch the testimonies again. Thank you to our legal experts who are presenting their very interesting project. Litigation can be a great means. There's lots of evidence to advance certain advocacy causes, and I think the area of disability it's greatly underused so far. The environmental field is further in this aspect. Yeah, please, I hope we were able to maybe inspire, motivate you to come forward, or maybe go and become active in politics for the first time. Please also, if you know anybody to whom this might apply, might be relevant, please spread the word that this is ongoing. Yeah, and I well, thank you all for joining our webinar and listening, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon. Unless there are any urgent last words, I will close the webinar hereby. Thank you also for the interpreters and the captioners. Your work is very important for accessibility. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.